Welcome back, legends and champions. I hope you're all fantastic. It is time for another installment of Friday Q&A. As always, thank you so much for this week's questions. If you have questions for next week, please put them in the comment section below. If you want to support the channel, either by purchasing some music that I make or by supporting me on Patreon, you can do that using the links in the video description. There's also some links to some free IRs and to my Discord server if you want to come and hang out, or alternatively, you just kind of want to come and talk about cats, coffee, guitars, the intricacies of P90 pickups versus humbuckers, all that good stuff that we're here for. So let's get straight into this week's questions, starting with the first question: do I have a guitar with P90s? I do. I have a few. I have chosen this one, which is a 2003 factory Les Paul Custom before they were custom shop only. And, you know, to be fair to this guitar, the build quality on it is kind of rubbish. There's so much kind of cracking around here and the binding's not very good, and it's not a great example of a Les Paul Custom, but it sounds really good, especially because I've got these TV Jones P90s in it. So I've got this, and behind me there's a Les Paul Special looking guitar made by Hamer. It's a Hamer Special, really a imaginative name they came up with there. That has some Seymour Duncan P90s in it, and I love that guitar, but this one does some really nice kind of edge of breakup cleaner stuff, and it can also kind of get really grunty, which I like. I like it. It definitely has that P90 thing going on. And one of my favorite pickup combinations on any guitar is just that middle combination of a neck and a bridge P90. So yeah, the TV Jones P90s, if you've got a guitar that has humbuckers that you might want to do something different with, I really like those ones. If you're a P90 person, let me know your favorite P90 guitar in the comments, because I know you're all out there, you P90 fiends. So yes, P90s, fantastic. Are they the most underrated pickup ever? Probably not, because I don't think they're underrated. They're just the thing that's not a Strat pickup or a Les Paul humbucker pickup, so it's easy to forget about them. Alrighty, this one's from Dom Gibson. A few names that you don't hear too much on the channel, and you definitely should. Let's go through them, because he's listed a bunch of players I absolutely love. Steve Hillage right at the top. Yes, Steve is fantastic, and is kind of the owner of the Mixolydian mode, I think. I love Steve's playing. Martin Barr from Jethro Tull. If you don't like Jethro Tull, we can't be friends. Now, we can still be friends, but I'll always tease you about not liking Jethro Tull. Steve Howe from Yes. Yes, Close to the Edge. I remember the day I bought that album, and that was one of those, oh my God, I think I understand why everybody raves about this band now. Steve Hackett, I will admit, is probably the person on this list that I listen to the least for just his own music, but The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is my top 5 prog albums of all time, and Steve's stuff on that, of course, is fantastic. And then Brian Robertson and Scott Gorham from Thin Lizzy are probably the reason I play guitar, especially songs like Don't Believe a Word. Just that on Live and Dangerous, slaps so hard. What a jam. That was the first guitar solo I ever heard in my life where I was like, oh my God, I need to do this. Little did I know it was just the magic of wah and trilling on that, but it's still maybe the most important guitar solo in my life. And Scott's solo on Still in Love with You on Live and Dangerous is like all-time greats. Scott Gorham, I think, is maybe one of the most underrated guitar players of all time, because when people talk about Thin Lizzy, they go, oh, Gary Moore and Robbo and, you know, Snowy White played with them, and John Sykes. But Scott was there, well, I guess, except for the time Eric Bell was playing with him, but he was there the longest, and I love his playing, and I love his songwriting, collaboration with Phil Lynott as well. And then Alan Collins and Gary Rossington, of course. If I shave and play an Explorer, I basically could do an Alan Collins cosplays. So yeah, some great names on there, Dom. Thank you for that. This next one from Jose, could I do an updated version of the power amp and cab video for the FM3? I really should. I think now that there's these speaker impedance curves in there, the video that I did is not really that relevant. I would just say, like, pick the impedance curve that sounds best, because the impedance modeling is so much better on the FM3. It would be amazing if you could measure the impedance of your own cab and load it up into there. I would love that as like an added kind of level of customization, but there's definitely some stuff you can do to tweak those. So put that one on the long list of things I want to get around to. This one is from Courtney, 2018, and shout out to thehomemusician.com, because I just got some of these effects displays, which are going to be so handy for doing demos. And you can see I've got one for the Poly Digit as well. Just having that as a desktop device is kind of a game changer, and that is going to sit right next to the H3500 and the Axe-FX 3 on my desk as a music making tool with this. So link in the description for those if you want some affiliate links. The next one, well, no, I didn't even get to their question, but yeah, shout out to thehomemusician.com. They also make those buttons that I use on the top of my FM3 Live. I think they're fantastic. So could I make a patch that has a tunable feedback frequency on an overdrive like the Whimsy Machine's Spark Drive pedal? I absolutely have no idea how that pedal works. I would need to look at a circuit and maybe play one, but I have seen videos of that. That's a super cool pedal for anybody who hasn't checked it out. So yeah, that's definitely a challenge. So I'm going to do some research over the weekend and get back to you at some point. Maybe that'll be a cool little video. The next one is from Ben Dunn. Thoughts on Lee Jackson amps? I so badly want to try one of their Perfect Connection preamps, mostly because I love Children of Bodom, and Alexi used one. And I'm just reminded that he passed away not too long ago, which makes me a little bit sad, because they were one of the first like extreme sounding bands that I really got into, and he was such a phenomenal player. Yeah, and the Metaltronic stuff is pretty interesting. I've heard Michael Nielsen's video with the Metaltronic stuff, and I was like, yeah, it does that sort of 80s tone, which I'm personally not that into. And Mike always makes everything sound amazing, and that was maybe like the least favorite thing I've heard on his channel. So yeah, if I can find one of those preamps, I will check it out so hard. But my, say, gas for a Metaltronics or something like that is not as high as it used to be. But as you say here, Ben Dunn, the Ampegs that he designed, I would be really, really interested to try. There's so many, I think, like the Lee Jackson design Ampegs are kind of like those Paul Revere Fenders. They're sort of like amps time forgot. But everybody knows Lee Jackson and Paul Revere for their custom stuff. They forget that they designed and worked on amps for some pretty big companies that are probably sleeper amps out there. So yeah, excellent question. This one is from Brennan Barkley. What is your most overrated guitar technique, or something that aspiring guitarists get unnecessarily caught up in? Ooh, spicy question. So many things. I think the biggest thing that people get caught up in is modes. And I think in general, this is my super hot take for the video, the way modes are taught as like scale shapes on the guitar is horrible and needs to stop. And it's one of those things where I get why it happened, where you had guys like Satriani and Vai come out in the 80s, and they were doing this amazing instrumental guitar music, and they were using their knowledge of modes and modal sounds to write stuff that wasn't just like rock and roll boogie. And people wanted to do that, and then everybody started writing columns in guitar magazines about like, how many times have you seen, oh yeah, so this is C major, which is Ionian, but then this one, when you start on A, that's Aeolian, and Lydian's just when you do it on F. I get what they're attempting to try to tell people, but modes have to do with harmony, not with 3-note per string shapes that guitar players play on the neck. You know, you have to know a little bit about intervals, and it's way more important to understand how intervals work, because then you can just kind of cross between any set of intervals you want. You're not like tied to a particular mode or scale sound. So, and I get that so much with my students. They're always like, oh, so when are we going to learn modes? Modes. It's like, let's not worry about that too much. Let's work on intervals. Let's work on actually being able to visualize a fretboard and do stuff. And when you can do stuff, guess what? You probably already know a bunch of songs, and you probably already know what the sound of Dorian is versus the sound of Aeolian, based on certain chord progressions rather than scale shape. So yeah, really long-winded explanation that I think people, guitarists, especially rock guitarists, we like fetishize modes rather than working on musical fundamentals like intervals and relative pitch. The other technique that I basically think people also get too caught up in is sweep picking. Like, sweep picking isn't really that mysterious. It's just a really efficient way to play notes on adjacent strings. And the whole idea of my 5-minute lick series is hopefully to bust a bunch of those myths. Like, some of this stuff is actually pretty straightforward. You've just read too many guitar magazines where people with gigantic egos have been like, oh, but it's really, really hard and only real men can do this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a fantastic question. There's so many of those videos on YouTube, like the one thing you need to know in order to master the guitar. No, it's just, no, it's not about that. There's guitar is this wonderful interface, this tactile instrument for making beautiful sounds and sometimes totally disgusting sounds as well. But there's so much more to music as a personal thing for you and as a cultural thing for all of us that it just cannot be reduced to this one thing. So yeah, probably modes, and then probably trying to break things down into the one thing you need to know. We're all to blame for that on YouTube, and sweep picking as a technique. Fantastic question. Thank you for that one, Brennan. Ask me another one if you've watched this. This one's from Jay Martinez, or Martinez. No, it's not. That was the first question. That's the person who asked it. Thank you, Jay Martinez or Martinez, about P90s. This is what happens when we do this non-chronologically. Shout out to Michael Torin, because he's asked this next question. We found one person who would buy a Leon Todd guitar. What would the signature model specs be? Well, this is the thing. If I made a guitar for me, it's probably not going to be super appealing to a lot of people, because it's probably going to be like a PRS SC245, which is my favorite guitar, but it might have like a coil tappable neck pickup, and it might have like a 26-inch scale length or something like that, so I can play in drop C with a bit more tension. Maybe it would be multi-scale, and maybe there would be a 7-string option for it. So yeah, like I said, you can almost kind of buy that guitar already, so go and get a PRS instead. Alrighty, this is a question from, not a question, it's a comment from Romlin Dreth. We need another 5 killer riff video. I'm working on one. I got to get this one done and out, but I'm in that kind of process of where I want it to kind of sound like the original recordings, and some of the original recordings are from the 70s, so trying to cop that with like Steven Slate drums and a few plugins is an interesting journey. This one's from RL10. Did I like the new Paul Gilbert record? It's fine. I think the thing is, everyone wants Paul to just make stuff like he did in the mid-80s with Racer X, or like the first couple of Mr. Big albums, and I think it's pretty clear that he's not interested in that, and I totally respect that. And I listened to a few of the songs, and I guess at this stage of his career, if Paul's happy making music, that's all that matters. They were not, personally speaking for me, my favorite things that I've ever heard Paul do, but one thing I like about his music is he always kind of sounds like he's having fun. Like, I remember when Spaceship One came out, and I was like, what is, why? You know, I was like in my late teens, and I was like, why isn't he just doing Scarified Part 17? And, you know, now that I'm in my 30s, I kind of get it. He's somebody who has a sense of humor, and he has a lot of fun. And, you know, even if you don't like the songs, that vibrato and that attack and that tone, no one else sounds like Paul. He's still got the magic touch, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's what I think about it. I haven't listened to the entire album, just a couple of songs, because I'm one of those dirty people who like listens to a couple of songs, and if I don't love it, I just skip to something else on Spotify. And, you know, some people will complain that, oh, this is the thing that's wrong with this generation. No, it's fantastic. I love that ability. I can go and listen to something I like and maybe get into something a little bit deeper, because that's the point of music. This one is from, this is a question I've been waiting for. This one's from Shahar Bar. Top 3 Nintendo Switch games. Easiest question ever, because number 1 is Zelda Breath of the Wild, number 2 is Mario Kart for the Switch, and number 3 is Untitled Goose Game. And if any of you play games, just go and get Untitled Goose Game. It's like the best 25 or 30 bucks you'll ever spend on a game, and you're guaranteed to get at least a couple of hours fun out of that, which, you know, for $5 to $10 an hour for pure entertainment, beautiful stuff. Excellent question, Shahar. Alrighty. This one's from Michael Parkinson. Which camera am I using? Any recommendations? At the moment, I'm filming on a Canon EOS M50. No real complaints about it, other than if you're going to go down the mirrorless route, look into some of the Sony stuff as well, because the Sony mirrorless stuff is probably a little bit ahead of the curve compared to the Canon stuff at the moment. But the M50, for what it does, for what I need, I think it's an absolutely fantastic camera. I'm using the kit lens. Every now and then I will swap in one of my wife's lenses that she uses with her Mark III. Is it a Mark III or a Mark V? EOS 5D. I can't remember the name of the camera. All right, there you go. You heard it. You heard it from the source. That's an amazing, amazing camera as well. And if you've seen my video with the Eventide H3500, that's the one I'm using as a backup camera, and the soft focus on it is just glorious. Alrighty. This one's from Ian Furcaron. Been meaning to ask about that melody. Oh, it's talking about Heaven Above. Yeah, go and listen to the coda solo on that one as well, because it's yeah, coda solos. They're a thing. Aren't they so much fun when you have a song and then you just get a like 3 or 4 minute extra guitar noodle on the end? I think the Allman Brothers just made a career out of guitar solo codas. Fantastic stuff, especially live. And that Live at the Fillmore album, so good. The tones on there, like, yeah. I think the great thing about Southern rock is they always had like the creamiest, fattest guitar tones, all those bands. No one had bad tone. You weren't allowed to be a Southern rock band if you had bad tone, I think. All right, this one's from Soda Cake. Ever had any interest in Parker single cuts? Not really, because I think if I was going to get a Parker, I'd want like the fly shape. You know, I'd want the classic Parker. I actually saw one of their Telecaster style guitars the other day in a second-hand shop, and in the flesh it was really, really pretty. I had never really kind of had that moment of like, oh, I kind of get this. But yeah, then again, you know, the Parkers are so space age, and Ken Parker is in the hall of all-time greats when it comes to guitar designers as well. Alrighty. Yeah, there was some discussion as well about who had a better perm in the 70s, Lukather or Sean. And I think maybe Sean just gets over the line, but who had a better moustache, Bobby Kimball or Neil Schon? Also probably Neil Schon. Neil Schon as well, one of my favorite players of all time. Been listening to so much Journey recently, and I need to do a video on Schon. But then again, you can just go and follow Neil on Instagram, and his Instagram's amazing, and he's still amazing. So, alrighty. This one is, what's the next one? From Rockstar Jazzcat. All right, how did I end up mounting my FM3 to the NUX Bumblebee? I did. I took off the end bumpers just so it sat a little bit more flash. I don't think you have to take the end bumpers off. And I'm using 3M dual lock. Dual lock for pedals, it's the greatest thing ever. It is so much better than Velcro. Just don't use Velcro again, use dual lock. It is worth the extra cost. And have I had any progress with Giant Steps? Absolutely zero. I'm still an absolute noob, so I'll keep you updated with that. The Gospel According to Luke. We're talking about the Steve Lukather book, obviously. Yeah, I have. That has so many funny stories. The one about was it the conga player or the percussionist, and like the kind of gangland deals, and yeah, really, really funny. Really funny. Lukather is a guy I would love to just sit down and have a coffee with that man. What a legend. And I think a lot of you all thought that Steve is a legend as well, which makes me happy that the people who watch these videos also have immaculate taste. Alrighty, this one's from LP. How do you deal with your inner critic? The recent Rush Chords video showed you can create great music by tapping into your influences, but whenever I try, I end up scrapping it because I become preoccupied with the fact that I'm referencing someone else's work. Okay, here's my hot take on all of that. So much of, I think, how we're taught to think about music in the West anyway is through this lens of, you know, great music is only made by great people, and like the kind of idea of a genius, you know, oh, Beethoven and Mozart were geniuses. That's why they did what they did. It's almost like being a genius just means that you don't have to work hard or, you know, have a lot of confidence in your ideas. And if you think about music less like this thing that just kind of wafts up from the ether, and only geniuses can really fully inhale all the waft. And think about it more as the way, I guess, music has existed in so many other cultures for so long as a tradition, like a tradition about telling stories that is passed on from human being to human being, from generation to generation. Then you'll feel a whole lot better about the songs you're writing, because the songs that you're writing should be telling your story and your stories. Think about it that way. If a particular guitar riff maybe sounds a little bit like Rush, own it, because if you love Rush and you make music like Rush, that makes total sense in that kind of framework. So that would be my way of getting around, say, my inner critic. And for me, I like drop tune angry person music, because I don't like being an angry person, but sometimes I am an angry person. And when I'm angry about something, it makes me think about stuff, and it makes me think about things that have happened to me. And I try to write them down, and I try to pair them up with guitar riffs, which by playing them, it's like a cathartic thing for me. So I mostly do it for myself. And if you can come up with something that reminds you of a Rush song or anything else, but it kind of makes you feel good and it lets you express something, or it lets you tell a story, then that is so valid. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. I think we're all kind of looking for authenticity in our music, and you can definitely make authentic music that is derived from other pieces of music that you feel is authentic. Anyway, that's my thesis. Let me know what you all think about that in the comments. Couple of questions here. We're getting close to the end as well. I've been yabbering on a lot, so where are we? Why don't I play Jackson guitars? What is my perspective on them? I just never had a chance to own a Jackson guitar, I guess. I loved Jacksons when I was in my teens, especially the Rhodes models and especially the soloists. I always wanted a soloist, but then I discovered a little brand called Hamer and a guitar called the Californian, and that became my favorite super strat, which is why I own a Hamer and not a Jackson. Some killer exercises to improve alternate picking speed. If you've seen Paul Gilbert's Intense Rock video and he does that lick, do that one and then go and watch the rest of Intense Rock. Everything you need to know about killer picking speed. And if you're struggling with the mechanics of it, Troy Grady's Cracking the Code stuff is absolutely essential. How many versions and modifications of ADA rack gear do devices have? Sorry, that made no sense. How many different versions of the ADA stuff do I have? I have a stock MP1, which was my dad's, so that's a 240. I have a stock 110 version, I have a 3-tube mod version, and I have an MP2 at the moment. The stock 110 version, I will probably do a different kind of mod to. Okay, and this also says, don't try to spell my name, it would be too funny. It looks like it is in Cyrillic. Is that Cyrillic? I don't know. My apologies, because it is a non, it's not the alphabet that I'm used to using. But I would love to know how to pronounce it. I always like learning new things. So thank you for your questions, and I would love to know how to get around that. People often forget that Toto was a session band. Yeah, and they played on so much stuff. Especially, I love finding stuff that Jeff Porcaro played on. I think he played on a bunch of the Boz Scaggs stuff as well. And obviously Thriller has Toto on there. Very good point there, Dean S. Alrighty, this is the next one from Wolfsten Music. Are we ever going to make it to Houston, Texas? I hope so, because we've played in Houston a few times. The last time was in 2015, and the show was actually broadcast with a local radio station. It was really, really fun. What was the name of that video? It's not a video, Leon. It's a venue. The name of the venue was Arcadia, I think. I think it's like technically North Houston. That was a great night. That was a really, really fun show. A lot of cool people came out to that. So yeah, I would love to go back. And my wife is from Dallas. So as soon as it's safe and we're able to, we're definitely going to come back to Texas at some point, because Texas is home away from home. Shout out to everybody from Texas who is watching. This one is from Silverist. You said Mr. Lukather is your spirit animal. How do you feel being someone else's spirit animal? I feel fantastic about that. I would personally recommend that person maybe go and check out Steve Lukather or Ty Tabor or Alex Lifeson or any of those people, because sometimes it's nice to find the spirit animals of your spirit animals. Like the influence of your influences is always a great way. If you like Metallica, go and listen to Black Sabbath. You got a spirit animal who's one person, find out who their spirit animal is. And I think this is the last question. No, it's not the last question. There's a few more. We're going long today. This is awesome. From Jesse Nicholson. Appreciate the thoughts on old rat gear. Have been trying to recommend something good and affordable to a friend who's just getting into this stuff. IntelliFX was your first recommendation, and the MPX-1. They're basically the first two I told people to check out as well. Maybe throw the Roland DEP5 in there as well. This next one comes from Michael Lenoff. Delay times on your song that I played in the intro. Basically, the way I calculate delay times, because I'm super lazy, I'll do a quarter note on the left channel and a dotted eighth note on the right channel and sync that to whatever the tempo of the song is. So I can tell you what those delay times would be if you don't have tap tempo ability. The quarter note, that song's normally at about 95. So try this on the left channel, try 632 milliseconds, and then the dotted eighth note would be 75% of that, 474 milliseconds. Sometimes having tempo sync delays is great. Sometimes not having them synced is fantastic, and EVH is a great example of that. This is a question from Peter Harvin. You mentioned you're getting my dad on the channel. That is going to happen. Just wait. I think it will be worth it as well. And we've got oh man, so many questions. This is awesome. Thank you again, everybody. Again, ask more questions for next week because I like going along with these. Yeah, LTD Guitars does not stand for Leon Todd Design, luckily. Rosanna and Olby over you are the standouts for Toto guitar solos. Lukather is one of my favorites for sure. This is from Retrospectations. The tone on Kingdom of Desire, I have to agree, is fantastic. And that's Luke singing all the lead vocals. Everyone forgets he's a great writer and a great singer as well. Alrighty. Last question for this week. If I missed anybody, I apologize profusely. You can always ask your question again and I'll try to get to it in next week's video. Did you see a copy of Sam and Nosrat's great book, Salt, Acid, Fat, Heat? Yes, you did. What an amazing book. It's changed the way I've thought about cooking, and I love cooking. I try to cook 2 to 3 times every single day. I also got another one called The Art and Science of Food Pairing by Mitchell Beasley, I think. Or Mitchell and Beasley, I forget who that is. Maybe that's a publisher because I'm looking at the side. I'm an idiot. This is a book. This is a great book as well if you're into food. Peter Kukit, Bernard Lahus, and Johann Langenbeck. Amazing. And, you know, one day I would like to do a book like that about guitar sounds because I think that kind of, the way we think about food and flavor can definitely be ported onto the way we think about sound. And I'm kind of hungry now, so I'm gonna go have something to eat. I'll play you all out with some dirty P90 tones. Thanks so much for this week's questions. Thanks for watching all of this video. I'll see you all next week. Questions for next week, put them in the comments. See you all then.